Hi there, and welcome to Motivational Moments Live with me, Belinda Boadu, your host. I'm so happy you are here today. Today, as usual, we have some pretty exciting topics lined up for you, and I'm going to get into them straight away. But before I do, as usual, I want to tell you a little bit more about Impact and Impact, Motivational Moments Live, and what we are all about. Essentially, Impact and Impact is all about motivating and inspiring you guys to ensure that you do your very best. I provide consultancy services to businesses, education, as well as careers, of course. And then MML, Motivational Moments Life, is providing you with all those nitty-gritty details that will ensure that you are fulfilling and that you are reaching out to the deepest depths of all your potential. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started straight away into the topics for today. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about purpose. We spoke about purpose in our 5th edition. Today is our 6th edition, and I want to just talk a little bit more about that and talking specifically about how to cultivate your purpose. Then we're going to talk a little bit about not being afraid to cast your net wide, or in other words, to reach for the stars. And then finally, I'm going to talk about being in it for the long haul, being in it for the long haul. So if you were with me last week, welcome back. If it's your first time checking out Motivational Moments Live, I am super grateful to have you here with me. Last week, we spoke extensively about identifying your purpose, how to do so. We spoke about the fact that you needed to ask yourself some very serious questions and keep on asking yourself those questions until you are getting closer and closer to finding what feels more like a genuine answer that's coming from within, rather than the usual sort of, when someone asks you the question, so who really are you? You mention your name, you mention your age, you mention, what town you come from and what job you do. That is not really what we're talking about when we're trying to identify purpose. Purpose is that thing for which you have been designed, the reason why you are here on earth, the reason for your existence. And it is in everyone's best interest to ensure that they find that purpose and that they're able to walk within it. Walking within your purpose ensures that you pour out everything that is deposited within you for coming into this earth, and that you're able to exit when that time comes by living a life that is poured out. So purpose isn't necessarily about what job you do. Purpose isn't necessarily about your career choice, even though we spoke about the fact that some career choices and purpose can align. And when that happens, then jackpot, that's absolutely fantastic, but it's not necessarily always the case. So I'm not going to go into too much details about all the discussions we had last week. If you'd like to catch up, feel free to go onto my YouTube page where I have last week's edition loaded, and you can catch up in your own time. But today I want to move on and speak firstly about how we can cultivate our purpose. So once you have been able to identify it, what next? Where do you go from there? Is it enough that you've been able to identify it, or do you need to be able to work on it? And the answer is certainly yes. You must be able to work on your purpose. It isn't automatic, just because you've identified your purpose doesn't mean that it's automatically all going to work out for you. One of the analogies that I love to use for most things is if you say to yourself, well, I'm trying to lose some weight. If you identify where the gym is, identifying the gym is not going to help you lose weight. It requires going inside, getting familiar with what's there, beginning to use it constantly. The more you do it, the better you become at it, and then you start losing the weight, and then you realize that it's quite addictive. You enjoy going, you enjoy seeing the results that come out of it, and you keep going, and sooner or later it becomes part and parcel of your lifestyle. So cultivating your purpose is essentially the same thing. Just because you've identified what your purpose is doesn't necessarily mean that you're now going to be fantastic and you're going to excel at it. You need to now learn how to make it work, how to work on it, how to develop it, and how to ensure that it's doing everything that it's supposed to do. So if you have identified your purpose, cultivating it means, first of all, you need to really begin to understand it. Understand your purpose, not just, okay, I found it, but why. The why is very important in this situation. Why do I have this purpose? And then you begin to think about the how. How do I begin to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to do? If you were with me last week, I spoke about how purpose always ties in with other people. Your purpose is never just for you, it's never just for your own benefit, it's never just for your own use. You'll find that when you're walking in your purpose, some way, somehow, it's for the benefit of someone else, a multitude of people, eventually for generations to come, really, even though it might seem like what you're doing or what you are contributing is very insignificant. Sooner or later, you'll realize that it's actually extremely significant and that it's benefiting generations. So now, how do you go about ensuring that you're working it out, so that you're doing the right thing? It requires a daily exercise, a daily working it through, a daily thinking about how can I improve on how I was doing yesterday? How can I improve on where I was at from the beginning to where I am now? How does it become better? How do I become stronger? How do I become more developed at using and developing my purpose? So if I take, for example, myself, I spoke last week or last session that my purpose very much lies in what I'm doing right now, all about helping people fulfill their potential. And I find that, it's something that I live, I think, I breathe it all the time. I didn't always know that this is what I was, meant to be doing, even though there were very clear indications of it literally from when I was as young as I can remember. But now, in my adult life, I find that the more I engage in it, the more fulfilled I begin to feel. But also, I find that every time I engage with someone else, I'm able to use the experience that I previously gained, the experiences that I've had myself, to improve upon either, how I'm able to help people, the direction I'm able to steer them in, the advice I'm able to give them. But it really requires you to go through a certain experience yourself when it comes to my purpose. You won't be able to pour out what you don't have within you. That's critically important. So whatever your purpose is requires you really homing in on that skill, homing in on that talent, homing in on the thing that you have identified, and making sure that on a daily basis you are working it out. How do I become better at it? How do I become stronger at it? Thinking about it alone is not going to do enough. There are people that are like, well, I've been able to identify my purpose and I think this is what I'm meant to be doing, but I really don't know how else to go about it. Research. In the day and age that we live in, there is hardly anything that you can't be able to research. So you can research, you can glean from people who are already there, gain role models, people that you can aspire to, people that are already working or doing something within that space. But then don't forget, and I made this really strong point last time we spoke, that you don't want to become like someone else. You want to be just like you, because being like you or being you is exactly what is going to make your purpose more unique, is going to make your purpose more fulfilling. So you can't say, wow, Belinda speaks eloquently. I used that example last time. I want to speak just like her. No, you want to speak just like you. You want to learn how to develop your skills and learn how to better yourself, but you don't want to become like someone else, because that defeats the purpose of you identifying your purpose. I hope that makes sense. So, you really want to ensure that you are able to gain a better understanding. Do a lot of research, if it's in books, if it's online, if it's through other people who are already there, follow in their footsteps in terms of understanding how they went about it and what they're doing to make themselves stronger. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, I joined a webinar that was all about leading, what's the word I'm looking for? Leading in praise and worship, for people who are singers and so on and so forth. And you would think, well, you've been doing it now for a good old 20 plus years. Why would you need to be? But it blew my mind. The things that I learned from joining that webinar, the things that I was able to identify, and the way it's been able to empower me right now is phenomenal. So you're never too old. You've never gained too much experience to learn from someone else. There's always going to be someone that's a step ahead of you, 2 steps ahead of you, 10 steps ahead of you, from whom you can learn, and don't always assume that person looks like how they look like in your head. That person isn't necessarily the one that is older than you. That person isn't necessarily the CEO of the company. Sometimes you can learn a great deal from the receptionist. Sometimes you can learn a great deal from your own children. So you have to be very open to learning. You have to be very open to developing, to identifying, and just tweaking your craft more and more. The other thing about cultivating your purpose is just like how you will stick a seed in the sand and need to work on it, do all sorts of it to see that seed germinate. You have to work on it. It requires work. So it's not going to be just enough to research. It's not going to be just enough to maybe, look at some quotes by someone that inspires you. You have to genuinely work on it. And depending on what your purpose is, will tell you how you're going to have to work on it. There's no point saying that, for me, I think I'm meant to be doing this or that, but I really can't be bothered. Sometimes purpose isn't going to be the most fun thing to do. It's not going to be the thing that excites you and gets you to jump off the walls. But once you start doing it and you start doing it well, you'll find so much fulfillment in it. And as I said, whether you're sleeping, whether it's raining, whether the sun is shining, you will be doing it and be doing it with all your might, because there's something about purpose that just fires you up. There's something about purpose that just gets you going. So, work on it. Work on it day and night. If I could just tell you how constantly my brain is working non-stop at the moment with regards to various projects that I'm working on, it's like I can't sleep. I wake up and it's the first thing on my mind. I'm going to sleep and I'm thinking, okay, have I done enough today? What more can I do? Okay, have I connected this dot to this? Have I contacted this person with regards to that? So it's something that really requires a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of work. And if you are unprepared to put in that level of work or look at that level of detail, and you just decide that therefore you're not going to do anything, you are not just doing yourself a great disservice, you're doing all the people who are connected to your purpose, who are connected to your destiny, a huge and major disservice. Because sometimes it takes you taking one bold step in doing what you're supposed to do that will inspire and motivate others to do what they're supposed to do. I'm hoping that by me sitting here and talking alone, I'm inspiring maybe 1 or 2 of you to do something. And if I decided that I wasn't gonna do what I'm doing right now, I may have been sitting on you being able to fulfill your purpose. It blows my mind sometimes when I hear certain people, tell me that, wow, Belinda helped me start my business. because I don't necessarily go with the intention to make that happen, but I'm encouraging people along the way, and I'm like, you can do it, don't let anything stop you, you can do it. And before I know it, they're doing it, and I'm like, yes, I was rooting for you and you've done it. But when they come back and they say, it's that one thing you said to me, Belinda, or it's because you gave me a push when I didn't think anyone else could believe in what I was doing, that makes me feel so amazing. Not a penny in the world could pay for how that makes me feel. So imagine if you are sitting down and not working on your purpose and not bringing out that which is inside of you and using it for the benefit of humanity, really. Imagine how many people's destiny that you're sitting on as well. So it's important. It's so important. It's so important. And I know the purpose topic is a hard one. Excuse me for looking down every so often, just checking my notes. I know that the purpose topic is a hard one because it's one of those things that, you can't just go and buy a book and read it and be able to be like, yeah, there it is. Or you can't do a course for it and say, oh, yep, I'm now qualified in purpose. It doesn't work that way, but nevertheless, that is the whole entire reason for which you are here on earth. So if you're not able to identify it, if you're not able to cultivate it, if you're not able to dish it out, it's almost like you didn't pour yourself out, and it's important to pour yourself out. It's critically important to pour yourself out. So that's really what I want to share with you today when it comes to the element of cultivating purpose. I also wanted to speak to us a bit on don't be afraid to cast your net wide, or don't be afraid to reach for the stars. My goodness, this particular element of our topic excites me so much. It honestly does, because I did not know, right, how many yeses you can get if only you are willing to try. Honestly, let me repeat that again. You do not know how many yeses you are able to get if only you are willing to try. I think a lot of us live on assumptions, or we live in a world where we are assuming a whole bunch of things, that if I go this direction, I'll hit a brick wall. If I ask this person, they will say no. If I go here, my company or my business or what I'm trying to achieve is too small, they will have no regard for me. And therefore, we're not even able or willing to try. And we are just doing ourselves a huge disservice when we are acting in that vein or in that line. A huge disservice. There is so many people and so many opportunities out there for us. People waiting to give you a yes. People waiting to say, I've been waiting for someone to come and ask me this question all my life, and thank goodness you came along, But we're not taking advantage of that. And we all think this person will say no. Or before I go into it a little bit deeper, another facet of it is that we're scared of the work it will require. So then we just say, let's just leave it alone. Does that make sense? So sometimes we're not willing to start that particular business that we've thought about and would be a great dream, mainly because of the work it will require from you, because of the demand it will make of you. Because everything that is worth doing will certainly require exceedingly great effort. Nothing that's worth doing is going to be done sitting from a comfortable seat. You're going to have to work for it. And I've been shown over the past couple of weeks that, my goodness, it's worth casting your net wide. It's really worth reaching for the stars. There are some people that I and my team have been approaching for various bits and bobs. And if we thought we had a I'll rewind a bit. We had a meeting the other day, and I said to them, you know what? It just dawned on me that I've been making approaches to people, asking them, would they want to participate? Would they want to do this with us, X, Y, Z? Thinking that we are like the small fishes going to ask the really, really big sharks if they want to participate. Not realizing that the big sharks are actually seeing us potentially as bigger sharks and are really pleased with the opportunity that we're sort of bringing to them. So all of a sudden I was like, whoa, we need to completely change our strategy here. Rather than going to ask, in our small little pool, can we have a bit of this, or can you do a bit of this? Let's just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is the person, the company saying no. And if you hear a no from someone, it's not going to be any worse than where you currently are at. I hope that makes sense. So if you go knocking on someone's door and you need a cup of sugar and the person says, no, I don't have a cup of sugar, you're still not going to be worse off. They didn't take your cup of sugar from you. You didn't have a cup of sugar to start with. They simply said no, they don't have a cup of sugar. But imagine if you go knocking on the door and they say, yes, I do have not just a cup of sugar. I have a bag of sugar. I have some flour for you as well. I have, some vanilla essence for you as well. There you go. A whole cake just because you asked. Just because you went for it, just because you reached for the stars. Honestly, do not limit the potential. Do not limit the yeses that can come from people. Don't limit yourself. The worst that can happen is that someone that you go and ask says no. And don't get it twisted. I don't want everyone assuming that I'm saying, yeah, go ask people for money. They should say yes. Go ask people for a loan. Go be borrowing money. That is not what I'm talking about at all, because it's hard times and everyone is going through a hard time. But if you need if you need someone to help you get from where you are now to your next level, and maybe what that need is some mentoring, maybe what that need is some advice, maybe what that need is that person stepping in for you, and you are limiting that person by not asking them at all, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. There are a ton of people waiting to say yes. There are a ton of people waiting to say yes. And I may have told this story before, but once upon a time, quite a number of years ago, I remember applying for a huge role. I just sort of left my previous job, and this is me fairly not too long out of university. I think I'd been working for maybe 4 or 5 years, but still quite young, And I remember applying for a job that's essentially, what's the title? But like the head of a whole department, right? And I'm talking a university, head of a university department. So you would think, why on earth are you applying for this role? Are you out of your mind? You just left university yourself. The experience you have is chicken change in comparison to the experience that other people who are, going to be applying for this job will have. So why would you even apply in the first place? But the first thing I said to myself was, what's the worst that can happen? Honestly, what's the worst that can happen? I'd been applying for tons and tons of jobs. I'd been receiving tons of no's. If they say no, this will merely be another no in a bunch of no's. Lo and behold, they respond and they said, I can come for an interview. First of all, being invited for an interview alone for this particular role blew my mind. That was an achievement in itself. That alone was a testimony, right? Because I'm telling you, it's a huge role. Head of a department, head of I believe it was like a careers and learning department. Like, you've got a whole faculty essentially that you are dealing with. And I, at something like 25, 26-year-old, have been invited to come for an interview. Okay, right. And in the interview, you had to prepare quite extensively to do a presentation, all sorts of stuff. Now, that brings me to what I mentioned previously. You'd be tempted to say, you know what, I got the interview, that's an achievement enough. The work behind what the interview takes is a bit too scary, so let's just leave it at that. But I didn't. I was like, I can only do my best, you know. So I put together my presentation. I sought help from some key people that I knew would really be beneficial in the experience that they carried. And of course, I reached out, I cast my net wide, and they said yes, you know. So I went for this interview. And they threw a curveball at me. They said that you can't show your slides as we promised. This is a curveball. You just have to do it, you know, freestyle. Being obedient, shall I say, or being a good hearer at the time of the Holy Spirit, I made sure that I printed copies of that presentation. So I was like, no problem. Here's a copy of my presentation. I took my copy for myself and I began speaking through my presentation. And then we went to the interview element and I answered all the interview questions. And I thought, well done, Belinda, you know, that's really brave of you. You've come for a huge interview. You've done your very best. You've answered to the best of your ability. And I remember the gentleman that interviewed me, because I just can never forget, asking me and saying these exact words. You do realize that the people that are, you know, applying for this job have 30 to 40 years worth of experience. You hardly have any when it comes to this particular field. What do you think will set you apart from the rest of them? And I was like, whoa, okay, like this is reality hitting me from all angles. This is the question of all questions. And I just sort of took a moment back and I said, I believe exactly what the others have in extensive experience, and that seemingly makes me look like I'm lacking, is that which will put me ahead, because the limitations that they will see from the experience of, you know, oh, people will always do this and people will always do that, is something that is not limiting me. I'm going to come in with a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh pair of ears, and I'm going to be innovative and be able to do things and handle things from a completely different angle. That answer blew this gentleman's mind completely. But I thought, you know, let's be realistic. I'm really young for this job. I think I've done, this is me thinking to myself, I think I've done really well. I remember walking out of the interview sort of almost doing like a good on you, girl. Like, you handled yourself really well, but, you know, let's not get carried away. Before I'd left the building, not even 10 minutes had passed, and the gentleman called me back and said, Belinda, we are so impressed with how you conducted yourself during this interview. We have shortlisted you along with only one other person to come to the final round of this interview. My goodness. My goodness. Like, if you've been listening to this story, you will understand just how much that meant to me as this young girl, fresh out of uni, just have a few years of experience under my belt, being told that I'm now being one of the only 2 people shortlisted for this huge grand head of department job, simply because of the fact that I said to myself, go for it, girl. So I want to say to whoever's listening today, go for it, girl. Go for it, boy. What's the worst that can happen? If you're trying to go for that job interview, but it scares the life out of you, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? If you're looking to start this new business, but you are worried to bits, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Go for it. What is the worst that can happen? You can't be worse off than where you are now. The worst thing you can do for yourself is to do nothing at all. So just go for it. The very least of what will happen by going through your by reaching for the stars, by casting your net wide, is that you've gained a bit more wisdom, a bit more knowledge, better understanding. You've gained more expertise in that field. You may even come to the end of it and say, you know what, I didn't get to where I wanted to get. The business wasn't really a success, but I bet you any money you've gained really great quality experience. You now know the ins and outs of something or the other, you know. So go for it. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit other people. Don't be afraid to reach and cast your net wide. And don't assume that people are gonna say no. Don't assume that people are going to turn away and not be of help to you, essentially. Don't assume that something is too grand for you and that you are just a tiny cog in a big wheel. You may be a tiny cog in a big wheel, but let me tell you something. When that tiny cog goes missing, that wheel is going nowhere. So you are significant, you matter greatly, and your input, your role matters a great deal. So please, cast your net wide. Reach for the stars. Reach for the stars. You can't be any worse off than where you are now. So reach for the stars. I hope that that's made it nice and clear. I hope that, I've pretty much done that particular element of the topic enough justice. Finally, I want us to take a quick look at being in it for the long haul. Being in it for the long haul. I want to talk about this topic. I think I may have touched upon it in a previous edition, where the world we live in and the society we live in, everything is click of a finger and you have it. Click of a finger and you're famous. Click on the finger and you've made millions. Click of a finger and you've... So everyone is assuming that this is now how life works. You know, we live in this microwave world where everything has to happen and be at your fingertips right now. And if it's not happening right now, you somehow feel like you're a failure. You somehow feel like you're insignificant. You somehow feel like you haven't achieved anything. But I want to just say this. Whatever is worth having is worth working for. You know, there are some things that people are doing. Suddenly they pop out and then we as people are saying, where did this one come from? You know, look at her, look at him. Thinking she's all that. Where did she come from? Where did he come from? Do you know how hard this person has been cultivating their purpose, their talent? Do you know how hard they've been working on their craft? Do you know what they've gone through to get to where they are now? It's so easy, and unfortunately, you know, the Instagram world, the Facebook world, the social media world makes it look like everyone is just, you know, everyone that's succeeding is succeeding with the click of a finger without us seeing all the hard graft that they had to go through. What's happening behind the scenes? What needs to happen before they get to the stage they're at now? Do you know what has to happen before I have the silence and serenity that you guys are enjoying right now? Most of you are well aware that I have 2 kids, right? So what goes on in the background before I'm able to sort of come and sit here all poised and posed and talking to you all? There is a lot that goes on in the background. Most people that are flexing on Instagram are, as they say, swans, looking amazing on the surface and pedaling like crazy beneath the waters. So we have to understand that, you know, just because it looks like it's all happening quickly, it looks like everyone is very successful very quickly, doesn't mean that that's what's happening in the background. And ultimately, we need to put in the work. And most of the time, people are becoming too complacent, not wanting to make an effort, thinking that everything needs to be handed over on a golden, silver platter, whatever. And if it's not handed on a silver platter, then well, you know. But no, people are working hard for their money, working hard for their success, working hard for the things that you seemingly see and, you know, think is all amazing. They're really working hard for it. So you need to be doing things that causes you to be in it for the long haul. You know, there are some people who shall I say, get very lucky, you know, or it was aligned with their purpose to catch on to something and then immediately find themselves very successful in it. That happens. I'm not going to deny that that doesn't happen. But for the great majority of us, we have to put in the work. And when you put in the work and when you are determined and you are focused and day and night, you're like, I want to see myself succeed. I want to be better today than where I was yesterday. One day you will get there. I am so fond of saying this, and I'm sure I say this in every single edition of Motivational Moments Live. One day you will surely get there. Just keep on working. We're in it for the long haul. We're not in it for a very quick, you know, quick microwave success. We're not in it for wham bam, thank you ma'am. We're in it for the long haul. Whatever that is worth doing is worth working for. It's worth fighting for. It's worth putting in every single effort you can possibly put in to see it successful. Right? So if you have a business, excuse me, forgive me for not looking out. If you have a business and it's taking a while for you to see that business do well, don't just throw it in the bin. You know, don't assume that, well, that was bad business, it's just not working out. Don't assume that, you know, other people are doing really well in it and therefore you just are not good at it. You have to assess, you have to evaluate, you have to sort of go back to the drawing board. Obviously, check out the details of what you're doing, constantly be on the lookout for how to improve, but don't just throw in the towel. Don't throw in the towel, because we're in it for the long run. And there will be no greater joy than to get to, you know, that stage where we're all able to say, hey, Belinda, you're here. Well done. You made it. You were in it for the long haul. You know, don't let what happens on social media fool you. No one is going to put the worst bits of themselves out there, you know, not unless they're doing it equally for the numbers, doing it equally for the views and so on and so forth. Everyone's going to portray the very best, the very nicest, the most successful part of what they're doing. But at some point, there's so many people who are like influencers, bloggers and whatnot, and they get to a point and they say to themselves, I was just kind of losing track of my own life, because everything I'm doing is designed to make a show for an audience. Everything I'm doing is designed to portray a certain lifestyle, and it's tiring. Surely you get, yes, you know, people are getting paid for doing that and you can enjoy the money, but I'm sure it gets very tiring. I've seen so many people have their marriages break down, have their families fall apart, simply because their whole life was focused on making themselves look a particular way to their audience or to their viewers. So don't be fooled by all of it. Focus on working hard. Focus on being dedicated to your craft. And that being said, these people are extremely hardworking and very dedicated to that craft. That's why we go back and watch them over and over again. That's why we go back and enjoy that, you know, subscribe and so on and so forth. But they have to work. They work hard. So you need to work hard, right? Work hard. We're in it for the long haul. We're not about quick fixes. We're not about quick money, you know, jump in, jump out. We're here to make a mark in this world. And the only way you can make a mark is when you just keep on going at it. Keep on going at it. Even when a pencil draws on a piece of paper, when you make a quick, you know, line, you can rub that out very quickly. But when that pencil just keeps drawing the line over and over and over again, you'll find that no eraser can get rid of it really without you still being able to see that mark that it's made. So come on, we can do this. We can do this. So just to summarize, we looked at cultivating your purpose and what it takes to do that. That you have to ensure that you're constantly working on your gifting, constantly sort of researching, reaching out and developing it. We spoke about not being afraid to cast our net wide or reach for the stars. Don't be. Don't be. The worst that can happen is that you hear a no, and a no is never going to be any worse off from where you are now. Honestly, it's not. And then I spoke on being in it for the long haul, not being caught up by all the flashy lights and by all the seemingly successful things that other people are doing, but focusing on your own craft, focusing and homing in on your own talents and ensuring that you fulfill in your purpose. So that's it really for today. As usual, your questions, your comments are very much welcome. I will look forward to responding to them all. And I'm also very keen in hearing any particular topics that you might be interested in me discussing with you. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube page, I'll be so grateful if you do. It's Motivational Moments Live on YouTube. And as always, if you are a lady and you are interested in all things womanhood, from motherhood to entrepreneurship to career to beauty to everything in between, you definitely want to follow Atana Women. That's Atana Women on Facebook, on Instagram. If you like all the beautiful aesthetics, you want to follow Bella's Blessing for all your Afrocentric accessories and clothing and bits and bobs. And if you want exciting new recipes and things to eat and things to create in the kitchen, you want to be following Belinda Boadu Cooking. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on all these various platforms. But otherwise, stay home. Well, now I believe we can go out, but if you have no reason to go out, stay home, stay safe. This thing is not gone. I think people are assuming that it's gone. Numbers are rising in various parts of the world, and until we hear that it's gone and there are no more new cases, you need to be careful out there. Don't find yourself doing anything that you really have no business doing. Okay, so stay safe, guys, and thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Ciao.